John is the operating partner for Alan Matkins in the Century City office, and he has had an extensive career in real estate transactions. He's also been legal advisor in some of the largest transactions that have occurred here in Los Angeles in the office space, and he represents numerous clients in the development and management and disposition of assets throughout the western United States. Also represents owners and developers in the acquisition and development of and redevelopment of of office buildings and residential buildings. And today we're talking a lot about retail and repurposing retail. So very appropriate. Welcome, John. So let me just begin this conversation by asking John. So we've had over 10 years of partnership, and Alan Matkins is more than just a financial supporter. We're really partners in this survey. Your staff and our staff work together to actually go out and do the survey. And maybe you can elaborate a bit about Alan Matkins and how you got into this and why you and your firm feel that this is important.
Sure. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. Well, as Jerry said, as we're moving, we've been doing this now with UCLA. This is our second decade, and we're really excited about the partnership, about seeing at this point now we really have meaningful data in a lot of product groups. And so that's really the most exciting thing for us. What originally attracted us to this opportunity to partner with UCLA was really to help give our clients a predictive tool for them to make intelligent investment decisions because, as Jerry mentioned in his introduction, this is looking 3 years out. And so that's really been the initial attraction and what remains the attraction for us today. So having said that, let's get to the survey. So I noticed in the survey that industrial space sentiment went down. And really, industrial has been such a bright spot in the survey and in the markets. How should we view this? Do we think we're at a turning point in industrial?
Okay, so we have slides on each of these. Let's see if I can find that. Industrial, and it's the first one, yay. And so let me just use this to try and answer John's question. So this is, on the left-hand side, you see Bay Area markets, Silicon Valley, East Bay, and San Francisco. On the right-hand side, Southern California markets, San Diego, LA, Orange County. And for industrial space, we also include the Inland Empire. And those blocks that you see are the sentiment. So that's the index. That black dashed line is 50, and above 50 is optimistic, and below 50 is pessimistic. And what we see is this kind of decline in sentiment, particularly in Northern California. But we combine the survey with this index with some other questions. And one of the important questions that we ask our panel of developers is, are you going to start a new project in the next 12 months, one or two or more? And so what we find kind of across the board in industrial markets is that our panelists, at least 3/4 of our panelists, say, yes, we're going to start new projects. So you say, well, how can the sentiment kind of be turning negative? Well, what they're doing is they're looking 3 years in advance and saying, are markets going to be better than they are today? And the answer there is, no, they're not going to be, because today is sort of unsustainable markets with extremely low vacancy rates and rental rates going up rapidly. And in today's market and recent markets, you could build on spec 1 million square feet of warehouse space, and by the time you open the doors, the trucks would be there to fill it up.
Right.
And so the absorption was huge. And so what they're saying here is we're kind of getting back to a more normal market here with more normal kinds of vacancy rates, but it's still a great market. And so that's what explains this decline in sentiment. It's just that going from a white hot market to a red hot market, but still, a market that our developers think is really going to be going great guns for some time.
Well, red hot's not so bad. Let's go to
Yeah.
retail, if we could, for a second, because that's the focus of your theme today here. So
Sure, and I think that's the next one.
we look at retail.
You're probably surprised these are in the right order.
We look at retail, and what you see is, unfortunately, the three Southern California markets on the right are somewhat decidedly negative, and the Northern California markets are close to, but not quite at equilibrium. Are there some bright spots you do see in retail?
So overall, and John, you pointed out that one of the real advantages of this survey, and one of the things that we were trying to get at, was to be able to predict turning points. When is it that building was going to start to slow down? And so far, we've been really quite successful with it. What we're seeing in retail, as opposed to industrial, is that with the other data that we have from our panelists, we really have seen a turn in the market. And retail building is slowing down. And so you see this with this negative sentiment along with the other data. But what else we've observed is that there's still some bright spots. That is, you have repurposing of retail. You have a change from distribution centers to experiential centers. And we noticed a couple of announcements just in the last couple of weeks of transformation. That requires some building. And the other thing that we see is with the building of new housing that I talked about earlier, you get a need for more retail. Kind of an interesting thing is if you think about density, and we're going to get more dense housing in California to be sure, but the amount of retail establishments per household is not correlated with density. And so we're getting more dense housing, and we're getting proportionate increases in the need for retail, particularly in multi-use. So there are some bright spots, but overall in our panel later, and our keynote is going to talk about this, we see a downturn in retail construction.
Right. Well, and you were talking about the experiential retail experience. My office building happens to look right down on the Century City shopping mall, and that is clearly what they have gone for there, and I'm really looking forward to them being done, hopefully by the end of the year, because it's going to be fabulous. And no, I do not represent Westfield. So let's turn to the office markets, if we may, because I found the survey results very interesting there. There was a bit of a divergence, and this data, as you can see, goes back to 2014. Going back to 2010 and 2011, San Francisco, because again, this was looking ahead 3 years, really led out of the Great Recession that we had. And now what you have is San Francisco for the last three being, relatively pessimistic along with the Northern California markets. And you have Orange County and San Diego being either below 50 or right at the border. And you have we've stayed positive in LA with a little rebound. So a lot of divergence of data. What are the panelists telling you, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, and this was the first survey that we started, which was the office markets. And so we have a lot of history on this, and this survey has been actually quite good in predicting turning points in these individual markets. And so what we've seen and been saying for some time is that we've got enough office buildings. Now there's going to be growth, and so there's going to be a need for some more, but vacancy rates are going to be higher. Rental rates are going to go up, not maybe as fast as inflation. And so this is a market that's kind of, in terms of building and new prospects in general, sort of on the downturn. Not that building's going to go to zero, but it's the market in terms of those fundamentals that you make business plans on is not going to be as good as it has been. And that's what we see here. The one exception is really Los Angeles. And though we see a little bit of abatement of sentiment in Los Angeles, it's not that much. And Los Angeles is unusual for two reasons. One is because of the high cost of office space in the Bay Area, Silicon Beach has really kind of exploded, and also the proximity to the entertainment industry. And if you think about, Silicon Beach and what was there 10 years ago, It's quite different now, but there's still not enough office space. And so you've got building there and optimism about that. And then the other thing that's unusual about Los Angeles is that downtown used to be just finance and legal and insurance, and everyone left at night, right? And so it was not, it was kind of a place that was central, but didn't have momentum in and of itself. And now it's a community, and people want to be there. Businesses want to be there. Office using employment wants to be there, and so you've got a lot of building that's going on now, and a lot of optimism there. Those two have really impacted this market for Los Angeles. And otherwise, Los Angeles would look like the rest, that the market had turned over. But it's got some different characteristics.
Let's talk about multifamily.
So multifamily is really pretty interesting. And this is one place where we were looking at the survey, and as you can see, it dips below that dashed line, and then it comes back up. Well, the sentiment had been going down, and we looked at this pretty carefully, and our builders, our panelists were saying, we're backing off from building more multifamily. But what was happening there was that they were building for the high-end market. And the survey predicted a turn in the market, that it had topped out in the high-end market. And that seems to be correct. So why is it that now we're seeing positive sentiment? I think it's, relates to what I was talking about earlier, that there is a move in California, I don't know how you pronounce the acronym. It's not NIMBY, but it's YIMBY. Right. Yes, in my backyard. There is sentiment and there is policy that is encouraging and making more profitable building for kind of that mid-market, not the luxury market. And as well, developers, their business is to figure out how to make profit building stuff.
Of course.
And if the luxury market's no longer generating profits, they're looking at ways to cut costs to deliver maybe not affordable housing, but more affordable housing. And that's what we're seeing. So we've seen really a bifurcated market, that the luxury market is still moving downward, but there's optimism about this mid-market, and we expect to see more building in that market.
Right, and I think that's really consistent with what our land use partners are seeing throughout the state. Their clients still are aggressively pursuing projects, still doing new projects, driven by, as the forecast has pointed out, employment growth, wage growth. But clearly, it's harder and harder for projects to pencil. I mean, land costs have obviously gone up a lot, but labor costs have gone up a tremendous amount. And people are really finding a hard time making projects pencil right now. Mm-hmm. But you also have kind of, in many cases, a lack of a risk-adjusted viable alternative, which still makes that kind of part of the real estate portfolio attractive. So I guess, when we look at all these results, you seem to have a topping out of the market in office except LA, mm-hmm. A repurposing of retail, which of course you're focusing on today, and it seems like there's still definitely opportunities available in industrial and multifamily. Would you agree with that? Or?
I think that's right, that we're seeing in specific markets and specific kinds of commercial real estate a forecast that the market is weakening, but there's still opportunities in commercial real estate, and we expect more building in commercial real estate as we go forward. Not as robust as before, not what we've seen before, but overall kind of an aggregate if you add it all up, not really declining either, kind of holding steady with a change in the mix. And with that, so we've just released the survey results. If you'd like to get a copy, I think probably the best way is to go to your website.
Right on the front page.
Yeah, where there's a downloadable copy, and they also have some videos and the like to dig into that with more detail. And we will be taking the next survey in December. So we'll see how these trends hold.
Knock
So-
on wood.
So, John, thank you for joining me for this
Thank you,
conversation about
Jerry,
the
and
survey.
thank you all very much for your time.